human services worker. I work for a large agency in Massachusetts, and the name of my program is Positive Parenting. And what I do is I go into people's homes and I try to help them stabilize and maybe learn new parenting skills so that they can either keep their children or perhaps reunite with their children because they've been involved with the Department of Children and Families. When I tell people what I do, they frequently say, well, that sounds kind of intense. And it is, I guess, kind of intense, but I really love my job. I love my job because I rarely do the same thing 2 days in a row. And I also love my job because I'm good at it. I feel capable and confident that any of this stuff that comes at me, I can handle. I could handle the client who refused to talk to me for 2 sessions. She literally crossed her arms and leaned on her kitchen counter and answered me in monosyllables. One day I showed up for the 3rd session, and she decided to shock me by telling me that she had had her nipples pierced the previous weekend. My reaction, ouch, made her start laughing, and then I started laughing. And then we talked for 45 minutes about piercings and tattoos. I could handle the client that I was doing the intake with, and when I got to the safety assessment part, she disclosed that she was living with not 1, but 2 registered sex offenders. I felt that I should inform her that she would not be reuniting with her children while she was living in these circumstances. And she looked me right in the eye and said, no kidding. I was able to handle it when I got a text message at 2 a.m. from my client who thought she was texting her drug dealer. We'll talk tomorrow. I was able to handle it when my 17-year-old single mother client got the news that she had gotten a place in the teen parent program that we had been busting our butt trying to get her into. But she burst into tears, not out of happiness, but because she was 17 and she was terrified that she wouldn't have any friends. We went out for some healing French fries and a long talk about her future. But one day I was driving to my first client, and I was already a little on the edge about this client because she hadn't returned my text messages that morning, and she always returned my text messages. My phone rang, and I pulled over and answered it, and it was the DCF worker for the same client. The DCF worker started to tell me how the previous evening at the client's home, the client and her partner had gotten into an argument. The DCF worker reported that the argument escalated and the partner dragged my client by the hair into their bedroom and slammed the door on her 3 children. The DCF worker reported that the 3 children were screaming and pounding on the door when the oldest one, who was 13 at the time, had the presence of mind to yell in, "I'm calling 911," and he did. The DCF worker reported that shortly after that, the bedroom door flew open and the partner fled the home. The children rushed into their mother, who was barely conscious after being strangled. The DCF worker reported that the police came, the ambulance came, my client and her children were cared for. The DCF worker reported that later that evening, a young couple was walking their dog in a local park, and they came across the body of the partner hanging from a tree. He had fled the home and killed himself. The worker and I exchanged a few more bits of information and agreed to stay in touch with updates, and then we hung up the phone. And I did not know what to do. What's the protocol? What's the policy when your client case has an attempted homicide and a successful suicide in the same night. I called my supervisor and I left a message because she wasn't available. I called the director of my program and I left a message because she wasn't available. And then I started my car and I drove to my next client because that's what I knew how to do. Thank you.